the 2016 Career Summit is a collection of 2 organizations, and I want to recognize them first. The Korean American Society of Virginia, Taewon Michael Kim, President, he's in the back in the purple tie, and the Korean American Women's Society, Marianne Raffine, who is President, and Youngjun Yang, who is Executive Vice President. She is a food. And also it's very important to welcome our sponsors. They are the Asian Diversity Inc. Chino An, who is CEO and founder. I'm totally going to butcher this meeting. How do I say Kimga? Okay, sorry. And the Korea Daily, Washington, D.C., and the Overseas Korean Foundation. So let's give them all a round of applause. So whether you're in high school or whether you're a young professional, this entire event is aimed towards you guys to ask questions to these very successful individuals who are here tonight. So make sure you feel free to ask these questions. I mean, it's very rare that you're going to get an opportunity to do Q&A, with these type of people just right off the book. So they'll also be in the back after we do the official portion, but make sure you ask good questions. So first, we're going to have 2 speakers, and then we're going to do a panel. So first, our first speaker is Eric, quote unquote Big E, right? He is the Director of Sports Marketing for Under Armour, but you might also know him as a former NFL player. He was a defensive end and linebacker for the New York Jets, the Cincinnati Bengals, and my hometown team, the Dallas Cowboys. And he also played for the University of Maryland and finished ranked 5th in school history in career sacks. And little known factoid, he was actually the MVP of the winning South team for the Blue Bowl. So that's very cool. So let's give Eric a welcome.
So how's everybody doing?
Yeah.
Welcome. Really excited to be here. As you can see the intro, Eric Abagu. I'm here to talk to you guys a little bit about my life and just give you a little bit on my journey to where I've come to so far. So I'm currently at Under Armour, like she mentioned before. I work in sports marketing, but I've had a long road to kind of get there. Grew up in New York. My parents are both Nigerian. Came to this country many years ago. I remember when they got here, they lived in California and ended up moving to New York. That's where I was born. Grew up in Westchester County, New York, which is a suburb outside of the city. Little small, really quiet area for us. Growing up, my entire family was into sports. I have 4 brothers and 3 sisters. I'm one of 8, so a lot of kids in the household. So for us growing up, sports, we were very competitive growing up as a family. One of the sports that we kind of gravitated to as kids was football. So my older brother, Fran, who ended up going to school in California at Santa Clara, he was one of the first to start playing football in America. My parents grew up playing soccer, so it's a different sport for my father to understand, but sports is sports, and it taught us a lot as kids. And my brother got into it and almost made it to the NFL. I remember growing up watching him play, and I was just so excited. I just wanted to be like my older brother. All my other brothers on my way up too also played, but it was my older brother Fran who had played in Santa Clara. He had a chance to go and play and try out for the San Francisco 49ers, but he suffered a really devastating knee injury. So after he went through the surgery, my father looked at the whole situation and said, you know what? None of my kids will ever play football again. So obviously, as you see, I played football in the NFL there. That actually wasn't true. So growing up, it was tough. As all my other brothers played, I was the only kid in our house that had never played football. I always wanted to play, but I never got a chance. By a show of hands, I'm going to ask a question because I didn't know what it was. Who knows what Blount's disease is?
What?
Blount's disease. Anybody? $1 million question. You can win $1 million right now if you tell me, does anyone know what Blount's disease is? I didn't know what Blount's disease was until I made it to the NFL. So the NFL has a combine where they bring all collegiate athletes and they allow us all to work out together. Here is the most important job interview of your life. And while I was sitting on the table, as you go through it all, the doctors examine every portion of your body. They look at all the injuries, they look at everything, they want to make sure that you're fit to play the game of football in the NFL. And while I remember sitting on the table and there were probably about 30 or 40 doctors sitting there poking and prodding, I remember one doctor saying, oh my God, he had Blount's disease. I didn't know what he was talking about. I have 2 scars on my legs, both of them. And they literally go up from bottom of my shin all the way to the top. The reason why, for me, out of all my brothers and sisters, that I never got a chance to play football is because I had Blount's disease as a child. Blount's disease is a severe bow-legging that happens when you're born, in children, and sometimes you'll see it in adults. You see when people grow up, you might be a little bit bow-legged, but mine was really severe. So as a kid, I remember none of it. Don't remember it at all. But it never stopped who I was. It never stopped me wanting to be the best athlete or person that I could be. I just was a kid. I remember seeing the pictures growing up, and when I had the surgery at 1, I had 2 casts. And I wore those casts forever, but I couldn't really walk. They used to pull me around in a little red wagon everywhere we used to go, and I could see the pictures, and it was crazy. I saw the pictures when I was standing when I was a kid. I was literally, you could kick a ball through my legs, and I was standing straight. But as I got older, and I remember they took the cast off, my mother would tell me that like no one ever knew when you were going to ever walk, because the doctors didn't know. As a young child, as you go through surgery at a young age, your development is a little bit thrown off. So they never knew when I was going to ever walk again. And I remember my mother telling me that it was about when I was 4 years old. After all that time, I had surgery at 1. I didn't walk till I was 4. She said, you were in the house and you were crawling all over the place. That's all you ever did was crawl. Sort of like this. And they said, one day, you just pulled yourself up on the side of the table and started walking. No one had tried to help me walk. There was nothing you could do to try to teach me to walk because I was so young. It just was going to happen, right? So for me, it happened. And from that point on, things had just been happening for me, right? You would see people walking around. It's crazy. And, I was a kid, so I wanted to walk. So for me, I suffered from Blount's disease, but I didn't learn the name of it because we never really spoke of it as kids or when I got older, until I found out when I got in the NFL. So for me, that's kind of how it started for me in football and why my father didn't want me to play. When I was in high school and I started out, my mother said, you know what, you can't play football. We had to have a permission slip signed by my high school that allows you to play sports. And I remember wanting to play football. They had to check sport that you want to play. I checked football. I tried to be really, really sneaky. Right? My mother used to work nights sometimes. She'd be very tired. I tried to get her to sign the paperwork while she was almost sleeping. But she reluctantly, she turned the light on. She looked at it and was like, good idea. It's not going to work. You cannot play football. So I ended up running track. I ran cross country. And if anybody ever run cross country, it is a lot of running. That's all you do is run. Run, 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 run. You run through the woods, you run on the track, that's all you do is run. Guess what? It was horrible. So I would run all the time, and I felt like, it was an outlet for me to kind of just express myself, right? It was that competitive nature in me, like I would run. And I remember one of my friends in high school, my freshman year, it was like, man, I don't understand why you're out there running. You don't even like it. Why don't you just go play football? And for some reason, it just dawned on me, why? I've always wanted to play. I never got a chance. You grew up as a Giants fan. You've watched your brothers. That's all you've ever wanted to do, but you've never done it. So I did it. I literally one day walked off the cross-country track and I went to football. And I went in and I said I wanted to sign up, and the coach said, you know what, great. What position do you play? I didn't even know what to tell him. All I knew is that my brother played running back, he got hurt. So I said, you know what, I'm a running back. He looked at me, they put me in practice, and they were like, son, you're not a running back. But we're gonna teach you the game of football. Because though I loved the game, I didn't really know how to play because I never played as a child. So I got to play. And that first year in high school, it was amazing, right? Football is not an easy sport at all. And the first thing I tell my kids want to play, I've got 3 children, my 2 sons, they want to play football, and I tell them the same thing. I don't think you're ready. Because it isn't easy. But that first hit I took, I knew that I was in the right place. Because like I said, it was something I had wanted to do, always wanted to do, and it was something that fueled me, right? I saw my family do it, I saw all my friends. I knew that this was the place for me. So I got out there and I played football that first year. I played defense, and I probably had about 12 sacks that year playing defensive end, beat up, no sack. I moved to playing running back the year after that, and I remember doing unbelievably well. Now, I told you in the beginning, my mother did not allow me to play. So for me, I kind of went through a dark period through the first couple years of high school, where I was never proud of it, but I actually lied to my mother for 2 years. For 2 years in high school, my mother did not know that I played, her son was playing football. My mother was a very religious person. I went to a Catholic high school. When I would have to be going on Saturdays and games, she thought I was helping the priest. Practice during the week, she thought I was at track. Now she worked, so she didn't have time to keep up with all 8 of us. So again, it allowed me to kind of be me and be out there and play football. The only ones who knew were my younger brother at the time and my sister, because I needed her to drive me from place to place. And we kept it quiet for so long, and I remember when I got caught. One of my older brothers, who also went to Archbishop Stepinac in White Plains, he showed up at one of the games. Now, they have the alumni game where they bring all the past alumni back and everyone comes to celebrate. My brother showed up at the game, and you know what? All you heard was Eric Abago on the tackle. Another run by Eric Abago for 25 yards. Eric Abago on the touchdown. And I remember walking off at halftime and my brother standing there at the gate looking at me like, what are you doing? I was so scared to come out of that locker room. I was so scared to go back in that game in the second half. I didn't know. I thought my life was over at the time. When my oldest brother, Francis, who had the surgeries in California, he had called my high school coach up and said, you know what, Eric does not have permission to play football. I do not want him on that team. We are more worried about him getting hurt. He grew up with Louse disease. He's got 2 scars in his leg and is not supposed to be playing contact sports. My high school coach, Mike O'Donnell, I remember him talking to my coach and my brother telling him, your brother is so exceptional at the sport that he's got a really good chance of getting a scholarship to college. It's an unbelievable opportunity for him to go to college for free. I remember when they sat down and told my mother, I was at the end of the hall peeking, just waiting to see what her reaction was going to be. And the one thing that saved me in it all was the fact that, you know what, I had done so well and had worked so hard that I had an opportunity to get a scholarship to college. And that for me was the only thing that allowed my mother to kind of let it slide, because for 2 years her son had been telling her a lie. And it was only a couple weeks, but it honestly felt like 9 months that my mother didn't even speak to me, because she was so bad about me not telling her the truth. But I remember her and I had a conversation about it once I started getting back into football. And her thing to me was about my education. She was like, you know, I don't want you to play. I hear that you're doing well, but you need to understand one thing. I am and will always be about your education. As long as you are doing well in school, I will allow you to play. But the first time that you fail or you're not doing well in your classes, football for you is over. Agreed? And I agree. From that moment on, I knew this is what I wanted. So the things that you set your goals for in life, like here's what I want to do, I didn't. I wanted to do everything that I had to do to make sure I was always going to have that opportunity to play the sport. And I did. I worked just as hard as everybody else, even though I was out playing football. It didn't matter. I knew that my education was important to me. I knew it was important to my mother. As I got older into my senior year, I remember all the colleges that would come and all the letters that I'd had in my locker. And it was amazing. I took each one of them home for my mother to see. Notre Dame, Iowa, Duke. It didn't matter. I remember when Duke came to my house and sat down with my parents, and my father said, "Oh yeah, my son will be attending Duke." As you can see, I went to the University of Maryland, so I did not go to Duke. So one of the things I promised my mother, no matter what, was that I was going to graduate from college. Because that was her thing for me then. She knew it in high school. She pushed me through it. She made sure that I understood that, like, you can be great, but you need to focus on your education. Because for her, life was more than just football, right? It's the same thing I teach my kids. Sports are great. I learned a lot through sports. Hard work, determination, sacrifice, all the things that I had to do to kind of get to where I had to be, get to where I wanted to get, I learned through sports. And my education was one of those things that it's been ingrained in me from a child that, you know what, football will be over at some point, but your education will take you through the rest of your life. I went to the University of Maryland, had a very successful career there, and got an opportunity to go to the NFL. While I was in Maryland, one of my really good friends there, Kevin Plank, has anybody heard of Kevin Plank? Show of hands. CEO of Under Armour, we were teammates. And Kevin and I were such good friends that, like, you know what? He called me up one day while I was in the NFL and said, "Hey man, I need a favor." "What do you mean you need a favor?" "I need a favor. You know, we got this product coming out, this Under Armour. It's great, moisture wicking product. You know what? I need you to do me a favor." "What do you need?" "I need you to take a couple photos for me." "Well, what do you mean a couple photos?" "We're looking to help marketing. Aren't you a marketing major?" I'm like, "Yes." That's what I was in college, a marketing major. So it was really cool for me to kind of be in the company and part of it in the early process. And us going through the marketing, from the commercials to the print ads to everything else. Okay? All through it all, I knew that this is kind of where I ended up wanting to be, utilizing my time in the NFL to help Kevin promote the product, right? One of the things that always dawned on me before I started with Kevin, my mother said, "You got to make sure that you graduate from college." I had gone to the NFL. I made some good money, not great money, good money, and already had a really good job lined up through my time playing in the NFL and working at Under Armour doing the marketing. Kevin said when I started, like, "You know what? I don't need you to go back to school. I'd love you to start as soon as you're done playing." But I knew for me, it was important for me to also set the same lessons that my mother taught me to my kids. So I said, "You know what? I'm going to take a semester," because that's all I had left was a semester of school, 14 credits. "I'm going to take a semester off first, and I'm going to go graduate." And that's what I did. People always ask me, like, "When did you go to Maryland?" "Oh, I went in 94. "Oh, when did you graduate?" 2006. "What?" It's a bit long. But I had a little break in between. But I knew the importance for me of going back to school and getting my education, even though I really didn't need to. I didn't. I already had a really good job lined up, had a really good young company. I've got a career already that I've gone through in the NFL, that put my money away. But I wanted my kids to understand that, like, that's all great, but your education will take you further in anything that you want to do in life. And it's one of the things that, again, for me, I learned growing up One of the things I wanted my kids to understand that growing up as well. So for me, partly it's here's how I've gotten to where I am. It's been the hard work, it's been the sacrifice. It's understanding that, you know what, I had a goal as a child. I stuck to that goal all through college, all through the parties that I didn't go to, the spring breaks that I never took a part of. I always had that goal and said, you know what, I want to make it. No matter what it was, and you do. You have everybody that says in college that they want to make it to the NFL, guys playing football. But no one would end up putting in the time, the sacrifice, and the work it took. And I think for me, in the things that my parents instilled in me, it forced me to want to do it. Because here is what I always wanted to be. You can take the easy road, or you can take the hard road. And I said, you know what, I'll just take the hard road. Because I was used to the hard road. The hard road in the summer when I was in high school, the hard road of having to deceive my mother to play, the hard road of making sure that my education was #1 in high school, my education was #1 in college, and no matter what, I was not going to falter. And it was one of those things, like I said, things that were instilled in me growing up. I had to make sure that I set a really good example for my children. So I'm at Under Armour now, and I work in sports marketing. My job, which is really interesting from the way I started the brand, because the way I started, we started with marketing, telling the story of why our product is so much better than everybody else's. Nike was there, Adidas was there, Reebok was there. But my job was to help Kevin Blank tell the story, part of my marketing deal. So now, I do the same thing. And now through us in sports marketing, it's through our athletes. And if you follow any sports, whether it's football, basketball, we have some of the best athletes in the game. It's because our product is great. That's what makes us and gives us an advantage over some of the other companies. We make really great product. We have really great service. And for us, it's about helping these athletes, helping us tell the story of the brand. Guys like Bryce Harper, right, who's playing tonight. Guys like Cam Newton or Steph Curry. Guys for us that are going to help us continue to tell that story of Under Armour. What was really cool for me starting out in the beginning was the fact that I was on the football side. I was the only athlete we had. I was the only athlete we used, the only person to help drive the story of the brand. And the really cool part about where I work now and what I do is I have the opportunity right now in football as we continue to help drive that story. So the same things I value in terms of helping the company grow, helping the company promote, becoming the best brand we can be, now I am involved in influencing that from a football level. Managing what we do around our NFL relationship, right? Our license business, some of the cool things that we do there as well. The cleats, the gloves, the apparel that we now sell, okay? Really excited to be a part of what we're doing. So for me, again, it all stems from the beginning. The hard work, the sacrifice, the dedication, the belief that, you know what, it's not easy. And let me tell you right now, it's okay to realize it's not easy, because it's not. If you truly want things in life, if you truly want to be successful, let me tell you, you are going to have to work for it. There is not a person that you are going to be ever that's going to tell you, well, it just happened to me. I didn't even do anything. Because as far as I know, anybody I know, whether it's Kevin Plank, myself, or any of the people here that you're going to hear from, it takes work. And you know what? You're going to fail. You're probably going to fail more than once. But it's that determination to say, you know what? I'm going to get back up. It's no different than me being 4 years old, falling down, but you know what? I'm going to get back up because I'm just learning how to walk. You are going to fail. Expect that. But it's your determination to say, you know what? I'm better than that. I'm going to work harder. I'm going to work smarter. And these are the things there that will help drive you the rest of your life. And we talk about it all the time. And for me, I I speak to it in sport because those are the things in sport that I learned. It wasn't going to be easy. I told you guys that about football. You're going to have to work and sacrifice. You're going to have to keep pushing and keep pushing if this is truly the goals that you want. All of my friends through college, everything else, like I said, there were no parties, no spring breaks, no nothing. I missed the spring breaks. But for me, it was about my determination to want to be great. And if you truly want to be great at anything you want to do, set goals, believe in yourself, know that you will fail, but know that you will rise up. You got to have that mindset no matter what you do, no matter where you are, no matter what you get into. So I appreciate you guys having me out here to talk today. I'm willing to open this thing up to questions. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Hi, I'm Matthew Lee. I also go to the University of Maryland right now.
Woo!
Graduated at 16 this December. My question is to you is, presented the dilemma where your parents ultimately held like your future football career in your like the fate of their hands, what would you have done if they said no outright? Would you have been motivated to just keep on pursuing it, or would you pursue a different avenue?
No, that was a tough one. Because my mother could have said no. You know, and it didn't. And thank God for me, it didn't. I think for me, when it came down to it, I was very passionate about it as a kid. I was. And everyone knew it. You know, all my brothers got to play. I didn't. You know, I would have to thought about it then, whether I had gotten caught and say, you know what, I got to go for it. I know my father, when he was around, my father was against it 100%. More than my mother, my brothers, and any of them were. Because for him, coming from Nigeria, he was not about that. He didn't like to see my brothers get surgery. He didn't like to see them get hurt, and he was not about it at all. But I think for me, understanding that, like, you know what, here was an opportunity for me. I knew how hard I had worked. I knew how hard I had sacrificed. I knew all the things I put into wanting to be great. I think I would have still played. Because to me, it was worth it. And at the end of the day, me and my mother, we laugh about it. My mother went to every single game at the University of Maryland. Almost every game when I was in the NFL. And it was worth every minute of it, too. You ask her to this day. We laugh about it from time to time when it was like, Mom, you know you really didn't talk to me for like 6 months. We do. And it was one of those things where it was worth it. But she knew her son was a little different. He was. Because he was a little bit more determined than everybody else. It didn't matter that he couldn't walk, he still was getting around by himself. And he got up by himself. So for me, I think through it all and what it taught me and what I was preparing myself for, I think I would have still played it. Now, my mother might have not talked to me any longer than that, but I think I would have still played it. Best decision of my life. Second best. Questions? Oh,
Yeah, what made you choose marketing?
You know, it's crazy. I got into business at the University of Maryland. My father, you know, came from Nigeria. He was in business. My brothers were in finance. For some reason, like, business was my deal. I got into business and I took a bunch of classes at the University of Maryland, and they were cool. I started out in accounting and realized I was not an accountant. I had never taken an accounting class. I realized I wasn't an accountant, so okay, I'll just do business. I got into marketing and realized as I started to go through some of my advertising classes, I really loved what I was learning. I loved being in the class. I loved as we went through commercials. I loved the analyzation of what they were marketing to, who were they marketing to, what was the message. Those are some of the things there for me that took me in. And I found myself just gravitating to it as I watched commercials. And it just was so interesting in how it moved me. And then when we got into the NFL and we started doing it with Kevin, it was kind of like, you're doing it all over again. And that was the thing that got me so excited about being a part of it, was because here's all the things I went through, here's all the things I did, and I was doing this in college, and you know what, here's the education that I really liked, and I'm doing it all over again in Under Armour. At this company where it was very small, very young, going almost nowhere, and again, you start to see the fruits of your labor. And it really just stuck with me all that time, and that's kind of why I got into marketing. I loved it through my years in college, and it was just kind of like, here's what I truly want to do in life after football.
Any more questions?
No more?
One more. Last question.
So how does the intimate knowledge of the game of NFL elaborate on how you promote your brand or your story?
See, that's the cool part. I know the NFL, I know the athletes, I know the life. And it does help me. Because again, for us, it's better understanding athletes. Better understanding what makes athletes better. Being able to say, I was out there on that field too. I know what your feet feel like when you wear those cleats. I know what type of compression you need so that you're not sweating as much. I know that after the game, you're hurting. Oh, it hurts a lot. So it's the products that we end up making again and helping us tell the story. It's the right athletes that are going to help push that story and that product for you. So for me, that was the cool part about being in it. You were an athlete throughout your career. You were into marketing. You got into this thing with Kevin. You became the athlete in the field in the NFL when nobody was wearing it. You got out, and now it's kind of like, oh, I can tell you exactly what those athletes need. I know exactly what you need for football. I know exactly how hot it's going to be underneath that helmet. I know exactly what your feet are going to feel like as you're going to run through it. Here's how we were successful in the commercials we were doing, the print ads. I know exactly the type of attitude you need to make the young kids say, you know what? That's what I want to be in life. I went through it. I understood it. I helped drive it. And now I'm going to continue to help drive it in Under Armour.
Our next speaker is Timothy Huang. He is a technology entrepreneur who is founder and CEO of Blvd. He has also been president of the National Youth Association and founded Operation Fly. And I guess a career highlight was he was one of Forbes 30 under 30. And his parents would be very proud. He went to Princeton undergrad and is taking a leave from Harvard Business School. Yes. All right, please give a hand for Timothy.
Thanks, everybody. So I want to actually leave a lot of time for questions. First of all, to get out of the way, I'm a young guy. I'm only 24, so really take what I say with a grain of salt. But I wanted to actually just go over some of the things that I've kind of learned in my life and some of the kind of lessons that I've learned so far, kind of the experiences. So I actually started my career really young. When I was 16, I got the really, really lucky opportunity to join the presidential campaign really early on. Before, I was kind of working a little bit in different Democratic political circles, but right around December of 2007, a couple friends called me up and they said, "Hey, man, you should really check out this guy. His name is Senator Obama. Like, he's this really cool dude. It sounds like he's running for office." And I was like, "I don't know who Obama is, but I mean, I'll definitely check it out." So I remember, like, watching TV and watching the debates, and I said, "Oh, wow, this is like a guy that I really should." I really think what he's saying is true and really something that we should kind of back. And so really, really early on, I ended up joining the Obama campaign back in 2007, early 2008, and had an opportunity to go out into actually Northern Virginia here and build out a lot of the political operations alongside some very senior organizers in North Carolina and Pennsylvania. So I actually ended up doing that. That was kind of how I spent the majority of my sophomore year in high school. I was really kind of going back and forth and building this political operation. Obviously, that election ended up turning out pretty well. And so, after kind of the election happened, I kind of got the political bug at me. And so I got an opportunity to run for political office. So right around the age of 17, I had the opportunity to run for the Board of Education over in Montgomery County, Maryland. And I put my name in, and I thought I was, this punk Asian kid, 17 years old. What does he know about politics? But much to my surprise, people actually voted for me. And I ended up winning the election, and I served on the Board of Education, which is an incredible experience. We managed roughly about a $6 billion budget for 22,000 teachers. It's a really interesting story where this is kind of how I spent my senior year in high school. But I would always be out of school, my senior year, and my teachers would come up to me and they'd ask me, what have you been doing all day, right? I mean, you're literally like missing class 3 or 4 days out of the week, and I would say, hey, I've been fighting for your salaries and your pensions. So I don't know if you want me to like keep going to class or what. So they let me off the hook, but it was definitely an interesting time. So one of the things I learned when I was in politics was that it's really hard, and it's really hard to actually affect change within the political system. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about what I wanted to do, and for the longest time I actually thought that I was going to continue down the political path, right? So in the Board of Education, obviously, a lot of people think, okay, well, maybe I can make a larger scale change, in the state Senate or in Congress or something, right? And I really took some time after high school, going into college, to really think about kind of how I would affect that change in the future. So I ended up going to Princeton and studying public policy and computer science. But while I was at Princeton, I got a chance to work for an amazing company. I don't know if any of you know a company called Square. It's kind of this mobile payments company where you plug this thing into your iPhone and whatnot. You can swipe a credit card. Anyway, so the company was actually founded by a guy named Jack Dorsey, who founded a company called Twitter. And we had the opportunity to come in very early on and start building that company from the ground up. And I was thinking to myself really heavily, I want to make a very large change, right? I mean, I want to think about very big issues that I care about, whether it's education or healthcare or financial services or whatever the case is. But politics was, to me, very slow-moving, very hard to affect change. And so very early on, I said, okay, well, while I was going through college, this healthcare debate was going on around Obamacare. And we're all thinking, as college students, okay, well, what is the biggest way we can impact the healthcare system as young people with these kind of really core skills? One way was to actually grind it out through Congress, try and pass these bills, year after year that actually inevitably would take a very long time, may or may not pass. Another way was to actually really thinking about, okay, well, what if we built out a mobile application, right, that connected doctors and patients in rural areas to deliver, world-class healthcare for people around the country in real time. And that you could launch almost immediately and get off the ground. So kind of got sucked into the tech world really rapidly, kind of working for a variety of different folks. But my junior year at Princeton, I had the opportunity to really think about, okay, well, what is an issue that I care about a lot? And one of the issues I cared a lot about was political transparency, the relationship between individuals and organizations and their governments. And I thought, what if we built a tech company around it, right? Basically connecting all of this information to the way in which people thought about legislation or regulation, court cases and whatnot. So my summer after my junior year in college, I ended up grabbing 2 of my friends from high school, over at Blvd High School, and we actually moved out to Silicon Valley, and we bootstrapped $20,000 from all of our summer jobs for the last couple of years. And we were living out of a Motel 6. We couldn't afford an apartment because it was just so expensive in San Francisco. So we literally had up to our 6th employee, 6 guys essentially sleeping in one Motel 6 room for about 4 or 5 months, trying to get this company off of the ground. And you can kind of imagine this. In the early days, it was literally just us, coding and cold calling customers and building the product and everything. And it was so bad at one point because it would take us like in the mornings about 2 hours to get ready because there was one bathroom, right? So we all had to kind of cycle through. But anyway, so the idea was very simple, right? Take all of the kind of American laws and put it into one place and make it available for everybody to be able to look at and access. And this ended up being a very powerful idea. A lot of organizations, nonprofits, corporations ended up becoming some of our first customers. And so very early on, about 4 or 5 months into the company, we ended up raising our first round of venture capital in Silicon Valley. So about $1.3 million from Mark Cuban, Jerry Yang, the founder of Yahoo, Steve Case, the founder of AOL, and NEA, one of the largest venture capital firms. And we actually moved the company back out here to Washington, D.C. And that was roughly about 3 years ago. So it's been about, about 2 years since we've been in the market. We've kind of grown the company today to about 200 employees around DC, New York, Seoul, and Hong Kong. We continue to obviously keep growing the work that we do. And I think it's a really humbling experience to kind of be here, number one, and talk in front of you, but number two, can kind of lead an entire company as it goes through these multiple different phases of growth. There's kind of 2 lessons that I wanted to talk to you about and I'll open up for questions. The first lesson is kind of around risk, right? And so, when you're in your early 20s, your late teens, and you're thinking about what you want to do, I kind of thought about this from my perspective as well, in terms of how much risk you want to take in your career, right? Say you start working around 22 to 25, and you work for the next 40 years or so of your life. All of the 40 years in which you work in your life, there's not that many times in your life period in which you can actually take a lot of risk without there being a lot of downside, right? So if you think about it, in your early 20s, you're not married, you don't have kids, hopefully. You're not dealing with a lot of these kind of personal type issues that you might be dealing with. And so, what's stopping you from actually going off and taking a large amount of risk in your career, right? I mean, the worst thing that happens if you take this huge amount of risk and you fail is that you just lose a bunch of time, right? I mean, you literally are not putting your family or your personal life or anything else in danger. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons that I've learned as I'm kind of going through the tech scene and certainly through Silicon Valley, is kind of this ethos of constant failure until you succeed, right? You constantly fail until you succeed. And so the best time to fail, honestly, is literally the age that you are right now, right? Because that's literally the best time when the risk is the lowest in your career, right? The older you get, the more responsibilities that you get, the more risk that will kind of get piled on top of you. And this is kind of what we call in the corporate sector the kind of the golden handcuffs, right? You go through your career, you have this like college debt, and you kind of get out of college, you take this job, and you keep getting promoted, you take up this mortgage, you get this new car, finally get married, and then suddenly, you're sitting there 15 years later, and you have all these responsibilities, and you say to yourself, oh man, I really want to start a company or take that big risk in my career, but I never got a chance to do it, right? And so, obviously I'm biased, right? Because I haven't lived the rest of my life here, but I would say that the best time to really take that risk is right now, because there's really no failure on the other side. The second is really around determination, right? And so a lot of people kind of glorify the startup world and the tech world, right? They kind of think that the tech world is super sexy. You have companies like Facebook and Apple and Google and whatever that really just start barreling upwards, and you have this like super glorified story. And I'm sure a lot of you have seen like The Social Network, and you have like these 5 minutes between when Zuckerberg starts the company and then they go public. And then everything else in between is just like a bunch of fights along, all right? But the reality is much more boring, but a lot more hard, right? Because every single day is such a grind when you're starting a company. There's a couple of stories I can talk about. The first story was when we were trying to raise our second round of venture capital. We had about, at the time, 2 months of cash left in the bank, right? 2 months for me to be able to pay my employees. We had about 20, 25 employees or so at the time, and we were going towards signing this deal, and then the day before we were supposed to sign a deal, I actually called the deal off. And the reason why I called the deal off was because I actually didn't feel like the investor that we had in place would be a good fit for us as a company. Great that we called the deal off in retrospect, but B, when we were actually sitting there, with 20 or so employees, with no cash left in the bank, it's actually a pretty tough scenario, right? And so I gathered all of our employees and I said to them, hey guys, we all took this risk together to starting this company. We're going to keep flying forward. You have to trust me that we're going to actually make it through. And so the thing that amazes me to this day is that all of our employees that day actually voluntarily gave up their pay for 2 months so that I could go off and continue to go off and raise this investment capital, right? But this is one of those scenarios where, incredibly tough, particularly for the CEO to actually sit there and take these types of issues. But the reality of starting a company, the reality of taking some of these larger risks is that every single day you're faced with some sort of challenge like that, right? Whether it's a capital raise, major customer leaving, major employee leaving, you might have some major engineering issue, major product issue, some supply chain issue, whatever the case is. What I tell a lot of people when they're first starting companies or when they're going off and taking risks is that the difference between the people that succeed and the people that fail is that the people that succeed are just there because they survive. It's literally just wave after wave after wave after wave of issues that you're constantly facing. And the people that really get to the end of the line, or the people that survive and then move forward, survive and move forward, survive and move forward, those are the only people that end up at the end of the line. And so it's actually this kind of survivor bias, but That's really, in my opinion, the kind of main determinant of whether or not people who take these massive risks will succeed at the end of the day. So those are kind of two lessons that I've learned, and I'm happy to take any questions you might have about the company or some of the kind of things that I've learned over the course of my career.
Are there any questions?
I'm sure there are questions.
Well, how confident were you when you're going to Silicon Valley for the job? And so that's not normal students will do. So how confident you were?
Yeah, so I started the company when I was 21. So to be honest, in retrospect, I didn't know anything. I think, honestly, half of Silicon Valley is kind of this, it's like this ethos of like people not really knowing what they're doing, but they have like enough conviction and are willing to take the risk to kind of move forward, right? So a good example, this is a guy named Drew Houston from a company called Dropbox. Now, when Dropbox was founded back in, I think, 2008, 2009, there was like 100 other companies doing cloud storage, right? And Drew actually started the company when he was 22. The problem was that he didn't know that there were hundreds of other companies. He just went up and did it, right? And if you have enough conviction to kind of take that risk and keep moving forward, as the markets shift or as the product changes, whatever the case is, you start to actually learn. And the biggest kind of determinant there is like how quickly you internalize those lessons, right? So as you fail each time, as this product launch goes wrong, or as this go-to-market process goes wrong, or you have this failure in financing, whatever the case is, how quickly are you able to learn that lesson and actually incorporate it into your organization? I think that's one of the things that we internalized at our company really early on, was whether it was my co-founders or our early employees, we said, how quickly are we going to learn this, and how quickly are we going to keep moving forward to actually make sure we never make that mistake again.
Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah. So it seems like you're good at judging people, like based off your first batch of employees, and then also like the investor you chose to trust. So what would you say is like the key? Like, did you have a hiring manager, or was it you that chose your first employees?
Yeah, so I think what's really been great at our company is that I've been able to work, number one, with a lot of great executives that we've kind of brought into our company. Our head of engineering is the head of engineering over at Bloomberg Government. Our head of sales was the head of sales over at Zillow, took the company public, and now was the head of sales at Tumblr before coming over to our company. Our head of marketing was the head of product marketing over at AOL. And so we had a lot of these great VPs that we were able to bring on very early into the company. So I think they had a good intuition for competency of the team. The real value add from like an entrepreneur and CEO's perspective is not necessarily the competency. Like I'm not going to be able to sit there and judge, who's a great product marketer or who's a great, infrastructure engineer, whatever the case is. But the real value is actually culture, right? And the values that you have as an organization, what you value in an employee, and how they operate within the business. So literally from the very beginning of the company, what I did was I actually built a 2x2 matrix and evaluated every candidate coming into our company by two characteristics. Number one was the competency for the job. So could they do the job that we wanted them to do? And number two was a fit for the values that we had as an organization, right? So do they take ownership of their job? Do they have responsibility over their job? Do they want transparency? Do they work collaboratively? Do they consistently seek professional development on an ongoing basis? And actually, once you actually plot that candidate between those values and then the competency, you can actually start to find the kind of high quality employees that you want, particularly when you're in the early stages, right? Because the reality of tech companies are actually not that big, right? I mean, Facebook, when they went public, was I think 1,500 employees or something, maybe about 1,000 employees or so. And the reality is that every employee just matters so much to every part of the company when you're that small that you have to really be careful about the people that you pick. And so up until maybe about the 100th employee or so at our company, I interviewed every single person that came into our company for those two characteristics.
Any of the young ladies have a question? No? Go ahead.
So a key aspect of your business is access to information. And especially on the legislative side of government. It seems natural to me that you would infer that that requires some kind of relationship with people on the inside. So what would you say is kind of like your most fundamental and instrumental aspect of branching and keeping that kind of relationship with those who provide you that access?
Yeah, I mean, so there's two elements to this, right? So the first thing is when we first built our company, one of the first things I did actually was I got a series of advisors and mentors around the company because we really need to build a network that was advocating for our company very early on. So I'm actually very grateful for a couple of Asian American leaders that kind of stepped up and helped me along the way. One guy is a guy named Wyatt Chi, he was the chairman of Reed Elsevier, a very large publishing company that we brought in very early on. Chris Liu, who was President Obama's cabinet secretary. These two guys came on very early on. They helped us kind of open up some of these access, either on the business side of the relationship or the government side. More tactically on our business, one of the big trends that we're riding right now is just the wave of the internet actually is still very, very strong. And one of the elements of the internet is that the cost of information inevitably will go to zero, right? So getting access to information, any type of information, whether it's a web page or you're looking up something on Yelp or you're looking up an image or looking up a book, the inevitable pace of the internet will always take information to zero. Now, one of the big areas of information is government information in particular. Government accounts for roughly 1/3 of our economy. They have a ton of data, whether it's economic data or legislative data, regulatory data, case law, legal data in its broadest sense. And a lot of that data is sitting unlocked, right? So our thesis from the very beginning of the company was that unlocking this data can turn entire industries upside down, right? So one industry we can talk about is the weather industry, right? So just by NOAA publishing the weather data, right, you have an entire industry that popped up around, insurance or agriculture, whatever the case is. Another good example, this is the transportation data that's published out there that created the entire sector around GPS. And so our thesis in the long term is that as more and more government data sets become online, we can actually create new business models. And so that's something that we took a bet on, and our technology essentially pulls and extracts all of this government data information out there and actually services it to the relevant businesses that need that information. And that's kind of what we built out very, very early on in the company.
Last question.
So, when you started up your business, did you have any competition? Like, I'm pretty sure like your tech company, outsourcing data to like government agencies or play a competition. But then also, like, what made you think that this, when you started your company, this was a good avenue for you? Like, there's so much competition involved.
Yeah, so number one, just from a business perspective, competition is great. I love competition because competition means that there's a market, right? That there's a demand being in the marketplace and that you can actually go in and supply something better. But based off of that, I'm a technology guy, I'm a technology entrepreneur, and so what I look for in building these businesses, whether building my own company or investing in other companies, is looking for the platform shift, right? Wherever the shift is happening, right? So a good example of this is 2007, when Steve Jobs came out with the iPhone. Most people didn't know this, but the iPhone at 2007, that was an inflection point, right? That was the point where people said, wow, like people are going to shift their information consumption from desktop to mobile. That's such a huge shift, right? So if you're a news company or if you're an application company, a gaming company, and you don't make that shift from desktop to mobile, your business is completely done in 5 years, right? So from my perspective, when we were looking at the market, there are a couple of things we were looking at. Number one was that a lot of the software is actually moving away from these like very clunky CD-ROMs into the cloud, right? And so I don't know if you guys are old enough. I guess we're all like similar age, but when I was younger, you would get these CD-ROMs you would install, and you could install the new applications and stuff right onto your computer. That's actually how a lot of businesses still consume software. And so we thought that the shift from a lot of the kind of on-premise software to cloud-based software would actually shift people's expectations. Number two is kind of this growth of artificial intelligence. So the ability to leverage artificial intelligence for novel ways to deliver information in a relevant way without actually using any humans in the process meant that we could actually disrupt existing business models. So yeah, we had existing competitors, right? Like Thomson Reuters, Bloomberg, LexisNexis, FactSet, any of these kind of large information players. We said from the very beginning, watch the shifts. And if we can ride the shift in terms of technology, then we can actually build a very sustainable business that undercuts these competitors as they start to kind of transition their businesses.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you.